What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Phase One podcast. Happy to be here today. This is the first time this is going to be episode 39 or 40. And this is the first time I'm having a conversation with a fellow SERE specialist. His name is Paul Herrold. We connected on Instagram a few months ago, I believe. But you've also worked with my brother, who's another SERE specialist. And it's cool today when we hopped on this chat. We're both sitting in front of the beautiful prisoner of war missing in action flag. So we're representing today. I love that. But I'm excited to be here with you, man. Thanks for chalking out a little bit of your life just to be real with me. And we connected over, we had a phone call last weekend and felt really encouraged from that conversation. I've been looking forward to pushing play and hearing from you, your story, your mission, and your message. And for those that are tuning in for the first time, the reason that we share our stories is so it gives all of us an opportunity to relate with another human when it comes to suffering or trials or tribulations or hurt. And then we get to see and hear how those significant moments in our life that was suffering or was rooted in hurt was an avenue towards healing. And that brings us to our mission and what we're doing with our lives today and how we're serving people, how we're healing, what we're doing right now, ultimately to live the healthiest version of our life. And the last thing that we're going to do with this conversation, we're going to wrap it up with words of encouragement, and that's the message. Everything that we're doing, sure, we can do things, but I think if we can look at the message and how that can bring comfort to someone else who's hurting, then that's what makes it all worth it. So we'll wrap this up with those words of encouragement and giving you all a message, and the message is hope. So sorry to give you spoiler alert, but the message is going to be that of hope. So hope you all get psyched and tune in. Thanks for being here, everybody. All right, brother, what I'm going to do is I'm going to enjoy my coffee. It's fresh. I'm ready to sit back and listen to what you have to share with us. I know that when I ask people to share their story, it's a very, very big question, and I fully understand that, but I want you to feel comfortable enough to reflect back on significant moments in your life that was painful, was rooted in suffering and hurt. And those moments are significant because they were the invitation that brought you to the mission that you're on right now. And you've learned a lot through the mission that you're on and how you're serving people. And I know that you have a message to give. So the first thing that we would like to hear from you is your story. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate you. Thank you for being here.
Yeah. So, like you said, my name's Paul. I'm a SERE guy. I've been in the SERE community for, 15, 16 years coming up, I guess 14 years maybe. And really, I joined a lot because of ego, but really, like after a lot of trial and tribulation and going back and looking back at my life, I really kind of tied the dots back to like I'm still just a really scared kid trying to find comfort in moments that like I felt out of control, and I've aligned my whole life to kind of fill that void subconsciously without really knowing it, right? So I find a lot of self-worth and purpose through helping other people in their worst times. You know, we both do that, teaching people basic survival skills, how to interact with the enemy, yada, yada, yada. But really is like the genesis of all of that was my insecurities from a very young age and trying to help others, because I took on this role as like a family protector and we'll kind of get into what all led into this. But it's interesting looking back and kind of seeing how things lined up, and and maybe it's like a little self-fulfilling prophecy, like connecting the dots after the fact. But I don't care. It makes sense to me. So essentially, my story: I grew up in Wyoming. Um, my parents weren't in the military. My mom was into banking. My dad was an IT guy for the state of Wyoming, and they ended up getting a divorce when I think it was like fifth into sixth grade. And when you're that young, you just your parents are in your brain. Your parents are always there. There's that comfort factor. When that gets fractured, it's tough to figure out, like, you know what is love, what does a relationship mean, if these two people are always together and now they're not, like, what does that mean for, like, what is the truth in the world, whatever. And I'm not saying that I was truly messed up from that experience, but I think these traumas, big T's or little T's, I think they add up. And what it definitely did for me, and I think it does for a lot of people, it frames how you view yourself and how you view the world. I took from a very young age a personal responsibility as my actions, my behaviors caused my parents to separate. And it took several years that I had in the back of my brain that if I acted better, if I did better in school, if I did whatever my chores, then they would somehow get together. If I could make them happier, I could mend that relationship, right? And it just wasn't the case, right? I didn't realize that these are two separate people trying to deal with their own life. I mean, we're all making it up as we freaking go. There's definitely no roadmap to raise children. I'm finding that out right now. But my mom came from a really hard childhood. Her parents were both alcoholics. She started working when she was like 14 or something, just to put food on the table for her three siblings. My dad's parents both died when he was like 18 and 20 from heart attacks, like super sudden. So he didn't have, like, they both had pretty damn traumatic childhood. So they're just trying to do the best they could, and I don't blame them for any of it. But it definitely shaped the way that I see the world, or I saw the world. And just that was kind of like a big turning point in my life. I have very few recollections or memories before that time. So I think that kind of hints to how traumatic it was at that very fragile portion of my life. And then moving forward from that, so I've got a brother. He's 2 years older than me. I was just kind of lost. Like, I didn't have really a sense of purpose. I wasn't the best at school, but I wasn't the worst at school. I definitely didn't try. I wasn't really into athletics. I did football, but I loved to skateboard. Always outside in the mountains, fishing, camping, doing all that stuff. That's how I grew up. And then moving a few years down the road, like, it's the way my parents had custody. It was 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, and they lived like, I don't know, like a block and a half away from each other. And we were in the hilly section of town. Even, Wyoming does have hills. And there's one giant hill in between my parents' house. And I was leaving my dad's house, and he had just broken up with his girlfriend. And, I could tell something wasn't right. And went over to my mom's house, whatever, burning things in the backyard or doing kick flips in the parking lot, whatever. And I just got this funny feeling that, there's something wrong. I need to call my dad. And so I called my dad, and he kind of answered the phone, but it was like really, like, incoherent. It was almost like he was talking through a tube. He was mumbling, a little unbeknownst to me. He was trying to kill himself. And so I didn't know any of this. I think I was 13 at this time. And I hung up the phone. I told my mom that I forgot something at my dad's house, and it was not uncommon for us to go back and forth. So I ran up this hill. Well, I couldn't make it. It was a block up to the top of the hill, and it was flat, and then it was a block down. And I couldn't make it up that hill. So, like, sprinting full force without a warm up, straight up a decent sized hill. And I've gone back in my in my adult life and tried to run up that hill, and it's no joke. But so I felt like this helpless feeling that I couldn't get to my dad fast enough, and I knew something was wrong. I just didn't know what. So I finally got there. The door was unlocked, everything. I went downstairs into his bedroom, and he was just laying on his bed, on his back. And I looked, and there's a pill bottle and a bottle of whiskey. And again, had no idea at 13 what any of this meant. And so I shook him, I was trying to get him, and we used to eat popcorn, like bags of popcorn. And he was trying to say bathroom. I need to go to the bathroom. And I thought he was saying, I need popcorn. So I ran upstairs and I made a bag of popcorn and I brought it down. And when I came down, he was like face first, face flat on the ground, and he couldn't like get up. And he's a big dude. He's 6'4", probably 210 at the time. And I'm 13 years old. There's no way I'm dragging this dude. So I, tried valiantly. And then I was like, I can't do this. So I called my mom, and who then called 911. So my mom showed up and the cops showed up basically at the same time. I went upstairs, told them what was going on, and the cop said, "It's like, is there a computer in the house, or is there a notebook downstairs?" And I said, "No, but there's a computer upstairs." So he said, "Okay, no one goes upstairs to the computer. I'm gonna go make sure he's okay because the EMTs hadn't showed up." And so I was, me being me, I was like, "F that! I'm gonna go find out why I can't look at my computer." Well, sure enough, my dad had written a suicide letter to my brother and I, and like, I've told this story so many times, but I still get fucking emotional.
Mm-hmm.
You could see the teardrops still on the keyboard, and the stuff that he talked about was like, he was doing it for my brother and I, and he's so sad he couldn't handle this anymore. And it's being a dad of two now, like, I have a real hard time still comprehending, like, how are you doing that for your kids when you're, all a kid wants is their dad, you know what I mean? Like, you take that dad away, you're not doing anything better, so going back to those like cognitive beliefs on, like, at the divorce, I took on that responsibility that I was supposed to make them happy. I was like this protector figure as a young child who doesn't know shit from anything, and lo and behold, he lost his folks at a super young age. He probably didn't deal with that trauma. He lost his wife. He's lost these, several girlfriends at that point in between, after the divorce. And, he's drinking, and alcohol makes you do stupid things. And he thought that was the best choice at that time. When he can recall that when he heard my voice on the phone, that he knew he had screwed up and he didn't want to do it. But like walking through the process of, like, in the letter, he talked about there's a new Walgreens right across the highway. I remember driving over to the Walgreens, like, describing everything that he did, came back, and did all that, and it's fascinating to me, especially doing what we do now, is like, taking people to that point where they don't think they can go any further. I mean, this is why I run ultra marathons. Like, I want to find that spot. Like, here's something extremely fucking tough. What do you do? Like, we talk about all these things about breathing practices and meditation and having intentions, but none of that really matters until it's to the point where, like, your back's against the wall and you don't think you can take another step, but you do, so I've spent a lot of my inner dialogue from when I was 13 years old up until I'm 37 here in a couple weeks, like, trying to figure out, like, what all that meant. Like, how can somebody think that it's okay to take their life to help their children? And, so again, another fracture in my view of of the reality of like, what does it mean to be a dad? What does it mean to be a friend, a loved one, blah, blah, blah. It's like all I see are these relationships crumbling, these people trying to end their lives, and I think I'm also a very sensitive person to these like traumatic experiences. Like I'm very empathetic, and I have a hard time watching um, videos of people like of dark stuff. Like I don't like people like abuse videos and stuff. Like I have a really hard time watching that. I had a really hard time teaching down at RT when people started having emotional responses because I freaking care
Mhm.
for these people and I know that they have to go through these hard things and like yeah, I'm supposed to be this bad role player, but like it really like I just have feelings, you know what I mean? But so that really struck me hard. That one really did. And you know, I say all these things and it's like the stories and the cookie crumbs are starting to build. When I was must have been 15 years old, like out of the blue again, very, very little athletic aspirations outside of skateboarding, backpacking, but no sports really outside of that. I decided like I wanted to go run. And I was at my dad's house. My dad made it through all that all well. But I remember I was just going to go for like I was going to start running. I was going to join the cross country team. Somehow I found out that there was a practice. The first summer practice was on my birthday. My birthday's in June. So I just started sprinting down this hill. I didn't make it more than like a block and a half. And I remember sitting on the gutter or in the gutter with like my hands on my knees, my head, holding my head up and just completely out of breath. Like, how am I supposed to do this? And up until this point in my life, like everything that was difficult, especially like, hey, I want to go try this thing, but if there was any sort of pushback, I kind of just steered away from it. I was taking that easy button because I really think that I was truly depressed and I was just trying to find every single comfort thing, just chasing those dopamine hits. And if there's resistance, like I didn't want that in my life at all. But for whatever reason, I sat there completely defeated in that gutter. And I like, okay, maybe I can't sprint, but maybe I can run slow. So the next day I went out and I ran a little bit slower, a little bit slower. So I trained for like 2 weeks on my own before the practice. And the first practice, for whatever God knows reason, was a mile time trial. And it's in front of all these people who've been running cross country and track for years. And they're like, you're tall, skinny, you go run with these dudes. And they're like the three fastest guys on the team. I didn't keep up with them, but I did better than I thought. I think I ran like a 7:45 or something, like not fast at all, but for a dude who doesn't run, I was like, okay. And the coach was like, I think, with some training, I think this is a thing. So I started running and ended up running through high school. I think we got third at state. I ran in track was my thing, more like 800-mile kind of guy, which got me a scholarship to go run it in college. And that running was really like a huge pivot point in my life. So like again, not super great at school, had the kind of the bumpy childhood, not having any purpose or direction, but running was like now I found like, hey, people think I'm good at this, and I've found friends through running, and it was a good outlet for a young kid to get rid of some energy. So I was like, this, it kind of fit the bill. So from that moment of like sitting with my head in my hands, just defeated a block away from my house, so out of shape, to 3 months later is like huge turning point in my life. And it's, if I didn't do that for, again, who knows why I did that. I think now looking back is that insecurity of like, I couldn't get to my dad fast enough. And I never knew when the ball was going to drop and when I needed to be there for somebody else. And in my mind, it's like, I knew I couldn't run up that hill, so I better get good at running. I think, and I don't know, this is me pulling at straws, but I like the story, so I'm going to keep it. Um, so I ran through high school and college, and I met my wife in college up in South Dakota. And you know, I think a lot of what my folks dealt with through the divorce was a lot of alcohol, and I didn't really drink in high school at all. Maybe twice, but it was like we didn't know what we were doing. But in college, like I lived in a old bus barn, so there's like you could park 6 buses in the basement. Up top was one giant long hallway with wooden floors and surrounded by rooms. So there's 6 of us living in this house, and we just throw parties all the time. We were running like crazy, but we were drinking like crazy. That's really when my drinking started. And I was doing all the normal college stuff, like passing out, blacking out, doing all these things. Um, and not thinking anything of it because we'd wake up in the morning, we'd go to practice. Like we could probably have ran a lot better had we not, but we were all doing pretty damn good. I think we got second at nationals when I was in my sophomore year. Like it was in a great environment. But well, that to be said, my degree is in psychology and childhood education. My goal was to be a school psychologist. So it was a small NAIA school in South Dakota. And by the time I was in my like 300, 400 level classes, it was like me and 4 or 5 girls, same group of people going to these classes. And people were talking about their emotions and like, oh, we just need to talk about it. Here's different strategies to go through and, deal with emotions. And I still kind of I definitely had that A-type personality where it was like, you're sad because your boyfriend is cheating on you. Like, leave your boyfriend. We don't need to talk about it, and it's a pretty immature, short-sighted view on life. But like, I thought that's what a dude would do. Like, my dad didn't talk about his emotions growing up. My mom tried, but I was just protecting myself and just clamming it all in. And then here comes alcohol. If I got, in an argument or something with my girlfriend, just get hammered and everything would be better. We'll deal with it, later. So I realized that being a psychologist probably wasn't the right fit for me. But going back to tying strings back to my early childhood, like I think I was so intrigued with psychology because I wanted to figure out like what happened with my parents, what happened with my dad, what's happening with me. Like, why do I have all these insecurities? Why do I have, you know, all this BS going on? I wanted to figure out like how this psychology thing works. Um, so my father-in-law was in the military in the Air Force for 20 years, and he had like a recruiter friend. And it was like junior year, senior year. I had 5 years of eligibility, and it's I think my last year at outdoor track eligibility, and I didn't have cross country or indoor track. So like the first semester, I ran with the team, but not really. And I was just like my internship for my education degree was at a preschool, and I was Mr. Paul. I was hanging out with 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds making paper airplanes and like reading books. And I was like, I'm gonna either be a PJ or I want to do this SERE thing. I didn't know anything about SERE, so I'd kind of decided I was gonna. I've always been interested in the military, but I kind of decided I wanted to do one of those two things. I wanted to do, and this is a lot of ego coming out, but I wanted to do something that was like not everyone could do it. I was 23 when I joined the military. I didn't want to like just have a normal job. Not saying that these other jobs are shitty, but like I felt like I was an adult, right? And again, a lot of ego coming through. And I wanted to be around people who were motivated. My father-in-law was an electrician, so he had a lot of stories about just kind of the run-of-the-mill kind of shitty airmen, shitty NCOs. And I was like, I don't want that stereotypical shitty military life. I want to be around badass dudes doing badass things. And that was my deal. So um, I figured I'd train for PJ, but I really wanted the SERE thing because it kind of met the mold of like I grew up in the mountains. The recruiter's like, I don't really know a whole lot about it. It's like professional Boy Scouts, but you're a teacher. So you're instructing. So I have that teaching degree. I really like teaching. And he's like, a lot of it's like just dealing with hard things. So there's like outdoors teaching psychology. And that was like my life in a nutshell at that point. So I was like, yeah, I want to do that. So I went to the recruiter, the actual recruiter, and I said, I want to join SERE. And he kind of did like the open general thing. I was like, no, like, well, he tried to go push me off, sir, but I told him I wanted to do this one thing. So I finally was like, I'm not going to sign anything until it says like guaranteed contract with SERE. Like the next week he had it, whatever. Long story short. So I graduated and in, I think in December, and in April, my wife and I got married. And my wife is a badass woman. Like I definitely wouldn't be here today without her. But when she does something, like she's like the ball is rolling and she's like 10 steps ahead of you and she's not going to slow down. So she probably is not going to like this story, but when we were talking about like, you're about to graduate, what are you going to do with your life? She doesn't want to have a schmuck of a boyfriend or a husband. And she's like, you need to do something. And she's like, my father did the military. He liked it. Even if you don't want to do 20 years, at least do 5 and we'll figure out what we're going to do. So she was like pushing me towards it. And so I was like, okay, we're going to do that. I, did this year thing. I went down to Lackland for the basic training. Didn't really take it super seriously. Like I figured I was a collegiate runner. The running is not an issue. I'd been training for the PJ thing because it was harder than SERE, the guy said. So I was like, I might as well get good at swimming and doing all this other stuff. So I thought I was like a shoe-in for the whole deal. But like life finally like bit me in the ass hard at stock or selection. And the first thing that you do is the AFSA or what's that PT test? It was
The
the
past
run. Yeah, the pass test. Yes.
physical ability stamina test. Now it's
Yeah.
called like PFT,
Yeah.
personal fitness
Whatever.
test or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. It was like was it mile, half run, 2 mile run, whatever. Mile, there's run, push ups, sit ups, and I think pull ups at the time or something.
And there was
And
a
so
little swimming too.
yeah, the swim. Yeah. Yeah. So I passed everything up to that point. Like you had to do it before you went to basic. We had to do it in basic. And then this was the only one that actually mattered. It's like move on to the next day, training, whatever. So I did everything, but I missed the sit ups by one. And um, lo and behold, I'm like 6'3". I'm not good at sit ups. I've never been good at sit ups. It's one of my cruxes. But it was one of the things that I neglected to train during basic training, right? So I remember everyone else got to go off and get smoked for the rest of the day. We all the people who failed had to go back and get in our blues and stand in front of the commandant, and basically like I didn't know what to expect. So I didn't call my wife before I talked to him. He was Master Sergeant Davis, and he's just like, hey, you missed it by one. I'll give you an opportunity to try again, but if you fail again, it's needs of the Air Force and you don't get to choose your job, or I'll let you choose your job today and you just don't come back to try. And it was probably a test, but at that moment, like I was like, oh, like shit. I had just married the love of my life. I had uprooted her saying, hey, we're going to move somewhere, but I only want to do this one thing. And she was proud of me for trying for that one thing, so like that protector role when I was a child, one of the hardest phone calls in my entire life was calling her afterwards saying, hey, like I failed by one sit up and I elected to try again. If I fail again, like I could be anything the Air Force needs and we don't know where we're going to go. She liked to have that semblance of control. Like you graduate from selection, we're going to go to Fairchild and we're going to stay at Fairchild for 5 or 6 years. There wasn't like we're going to Korea or whatever. It's like I was balling in my freaking hotel or in the dorm room. I was like one sit up, like, I had all this ego in my brain. I was a collegiate athlete. Like I looked athletic, all this bullshit. And I just didn't do sit-ups during basic training. Like I did push-ups all day long every day, but I just never did sit-ups because they're the uncomfortable thing for me to do because I was just not good at them. So I think I had like 2 weeks or 3 weeks until the next class started. And that's like, I just went to the gym at Medina. I ran. I did push ups. I did a shit ton of sit ups, a shit ton of abs, a bunch of stretching. And I sat in the dorm rooms practicing sewing. Like, just this shameful
Mhm.
life. That's what I was doing. Um, and this, I mean, it'll all lead up, but I think only 3 people passed that first selection. So there's like 5 selection classes they put per class a year as when you go up. So there's like his Alpha only had 4 or 5 people graduate. I started with Bravo, and what is it, like 2 or 3 weeks long, whatever it is, about halfway
Mhm.
through, there's only 4 of us left. And they were talking about canceling that class because there wasn't enough people to do all the team building exercises, whatever. And so I was like, oh, shit, this is supposed to be, I go to basic training for 6 weeks. I go to selection for 3 weeks. The 3 weeks is now turned into 6 weeks. They're going to have to restart this thing. So it's turning into 9 weeks. And the whole time my wife is sitting there like waiting for me to come back so we can PCS up to Fairchild. And so I was like, I don't like, we need to get this ball going. I don't want to stop again. So thankfully we graduated with 4 of us. And I think the next iteration had like 2 graduate and then another 2 or 3. And then it's like starting the class of what was it, 1202, there was 11 or 12 like basic training stock to Fairchild, and the rest to make up 22, I think, or 23 people were all people who had failed integrated on 1201. So it was like half the class were just had to do fan mobile and teaching text, and they would get their beret and go to the 22nd. Everyone else had to do the fan mobile, teaching text, and everything else, right? So it was a super small class to begin with. And on top of that, they had, remember that show, Surviving the Cut?
Mhm.
They were filming the class for that show. So it was like day one, back behind the old buildings at the 22nd. They had this quad pod, and they made it super dramatic. Like we're all standing at attention, getting yelled at, and there's these dudes with cameras in your face. It's snowing outside. I was like, what is going on here? And a lot of dudes quit because of that, like added pressure. And it was a super hard winter. But long story short, um, so during FAM, I think like the first week that we only had 2 elements to start the class. The first week they combined elements because so many people quit. So we like had double the amount of goats. The other element who like disbanded just were not eating hardly anything because they just didn't want to spend the effort to kill the goats and do the chickens and
Mhm.
doing all that stuff. So they're like eating their oatmeal and boiling potatoes, but not killing any of the animals. So we had
Mhm.
to like we had this menagerie in this freaking snowy forest of all these animals, dude. And these goats were like goats do, just a bunch of assholes breaking out of our fence every day and like chasing these goats through the wilderness. Um, but it was like the cadre were getting frustrated because everyone was quitting. And if they weren't quitting, they were just so depleted, they couldn't finish the tasks, And dude, it was trying times. And I remember Sergeant Carlos had this like super squeaky voice, and he's kind of an asshole. But it was like super late at night. The cadre were hiding in the bushes outside of the firelight. And I was just yelling at the other people in the element because they weren't getting off their ass. They were doing their personal assignments before they're doing the team assignments. And dude, I was just like freaking losing it because I knew that like there's not enough time in the night to get all the wood chopped, do all the boughs, get my personal stuff and sleep. And we hadn't slept in like 3 or 4 days, something like that. but all these people were just crumping and quitting, drinking all the coffee and just sitting on their ass by the cold or by the warm fire. And so I was just fucking yelling and screaming. And I said, fuck it. Like, fuck all you. Took my axe and went down to go make the signal or something. When they came in and stopped me with the camera crew, and it was like under there, like 4 dudes with headlamps just shining in my eyes with this camera. And they're trying to like get me to dime out the other dudes. And I remember thinking, I was like, this is going to be on national television, but I can't help but to just fucking cry because I was so frustrated, dude. And uh, long story short, FAM, we made it through FAM. I think we had 6 people, 7 people make it through FAM. So we started mobile with 7, and there's only 3 of like the traditional BMT stock to Fairchild. The rest were all just doing the abbreviated thing to graduate. And I think 3 or 4 days into mobile, it was me and 2 other dudes, or it was four guys. Underwood couldn't pass angulation, so he failed out of the phase, but they were going to keep him. So he just wasn't going to graduate, but he was going through all the motions with us. And then there's a Matthias is still a SERE guy, and then Libby graduated but didn't certify. So then he's no longer in the career field. But so there's just that 4 of us, and they're like, okay, there's no training objectives, so we're just going to put these dudes out on solo. So I remember walking with Spinamata.
Oh yeah.
Dude, it was him and me, and we're walking through giant snowshoes, just sucking at life. And he's such a awesome dude, great personality. And I remember sitting up on a mountain with him, and I think either I had cigarettes, which I don't smoke cigarettes, or he had cigarettes, but we were smoking a cigarette. Maybe it was a little cigarilla or something. And he's like, dude, I hate to say this to you, I break the news, but like the team is over. You're gonna have to recycle. Like, you're doing great, but it's going to be just you after this phase because the other 2 dudes are going to graduate. And I was still in the solo, there's still stuff I had to do. And I think Matthias and Libby still had to do their integrated, like 3 or 4 day solo, like living out in your own shelter sort of thing for whatever, 3 nights or whatever. And so he's like, you're going to, you graduated the nav portion, but we still have to stay out and do like 3 days of solo, and then you can go home. And so I was just like, I just can't win, but for whatever reason, back to that, me with my head in my fucking hands in the gutter, like I finally found something that I wasn't going to let go of. And I think a lot of it was that pride to not make my wife, not to let her down. You know what I mean? Like, I remember we lived on base at the time, driving around the flight line, and I was just listening to Bob Seger's Like a Rock song before every day, like driving into work. Cause like, this is all I have to do. Just be like a rock, just hold on, blah, 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 whatever. So during that solo, I remember the cadre came over, and, they all felt, you kind of tell, they kind of felt bad for me, and no one knew what was going to happen. But I was doing like a good little soldier, here's my list of things to do. I'm going to fucking rock it out. Once it's done, I'm going to go back through. I'm going to make sure everything's better than it was, improving my shelter, doing all this other stuff. Well, everyone else had just kind of basically quit, and their shelters were super sad, super depressing. They weren't trying. And so I got paraded around, and the dudes who quit had to stay out there the entire time in improvised shelters, dude, just sucking at life. And so I got paraded around, and then the very last day, dude, they're like, be at the instructor camp at 7 or whatever in the morning, have everything packed up. We're going to pack up all the team stuff, and then we're going to drive home. Everyone was late except for me. So I'm standing there in my snowshoes, freezing cold, and there's like the bench full of all this food they hadn't eaten. And they're all, heckling me, whatever, talking shit. Finally, somebody was like, where's everyone else? And I said, I don't know. And so they told me to go get them. And I think it was Sergeant Carlos was like, no, stop, get over here. You're going to eat all of this food. And if you don't get it done by the time they get here, then we're going to make you do push-ups or something. This is just messing with me. So I was like, dude, there's like candy, ribs, and corn and mashed potatoes from the night before. And I was like, I didn't know what to do. And they're like, no, seriously, like eat all this. They took off on their snowmobiles or whatever they did to go get everyone else. And so I chowed down. I got back to base, and then hey, tomorrow you got to go like talk to the commandant about what's going to happen next. And they told me to get like a little speech prepared to like why, because they asked me what I wanted to do, and I wanted to continue on with training. And long story short, they didn't think it was financially feasible to go through, and I was pissed because like we train people to survive on their own, not in a team of 60 freaking dudes, not in an element of 12. It's like you're a pilot, you ejected, here's the little stuff you have, go survive. And I was like, why can't we just do that with me? And their ego again, I was like, I wanted to be the dude who was the only one who had ever done it all alone, whatever, but didn't happen. But what that taught me was, I stopped trusting all those teammates. Like people had stolen my spoon. We had to whittle these spoons for impro assignments. They'd stolen it and scratched my little etchings off. And I found it the next day. It's like I was failing these little things. Like somebody had stolen my bolt knife that I'd done all my care and use on and given me a rusty one. And I finally was like trying to show the cadre, it's like, this isn't my name. Like this is not my freaking knife. Somebody has my knife. I couldn't find it by the end of it. But anyways, doesn't matter. So I was like, F all these dudes. They're going to quit. They're going to steal. They're going to lie. I don't want anything to do with them. So this thought in my brain of like, I wanted to do hard things with hard people is like, all these dudes are chumps. They're not who I think they should be, whatever. So I sit and I wait for the next class to start. And, again, like alpha goes through, they slowly start trickling in and PCS and people in. But like, I didn't want to get to know any of them because I was like, you're all going to quit. You're all going to just be losers. So it took a long time to make friends with the people who I actually graduated with. And I tell you, coming from a winter class into a summer class, like fam is a fucking joke. Summer fam is so easy compared to what I went through in the winter, dude. So easy. But it was a really good experience to like actually put yourself into an extremely hard thing and like have that ego and have that drive to like not quit. But what it taught me was that when things get hard, like I can only rely on myself because I couldn't trust anybody else. So I wouldn't go to anybody for help. I would have to figure it out on my own. So that's where like that ego finally like tipped over the pendulum, thinking that I had all the answers and I had what it took to figure out whatever was ailing me at that moment. And that ultimately led to my demise. But that was my claim to fame, dude. I was the last one of the class that never was. And dude, it was such a fun experience, but it was also like fun looking back, not fun going through. But yeah, I think I learned so much through that whole thing. And I built a reputation up through that. Like your brother had graduated, I think a class or two before that. So like they were all in the field flights, and we all march around the little square there at Fairchild, and like I was the only one carrying around the guidon, and it's like, that freaking sucked. And then I went to Delta where he was at, and it's like I built up a pretty damn good reputation. So I had that like in my mind, some image I had to withhold. Like I had to be this person, I had to be the first one done with everything. I wanted to certify first. I wanted to do all these things. I wanted to be the fastest, the best, whatever, which is all good. Like that's all we're trying to do. But it was suppressing so much shit. Like I stopped worrying about what happened in my childhood. Like my wife and I had a great relationship, but I mean, we weren't dealing with the things that we should have been dealing with. We were going out and partying on the weekends and not, like if we had an argument, we wouldn't really talk about it. We would just numb it by distraction, by whatever. So PCS down to Florida, I had like a non-vol basically position to ST, which is unheard of, but I didn't have like left and right limits on what a SERE guy does within special tactics. Like they didn't have that set. And it turned out to be like pretty political, and I was just kind of like this pawn. But through that whole thing, like I built up this reputation, I built up this like body of work that like I at the time, dude, I was like, I want to be a chief. I want to go the whole way. Like this is what I want to do, and I want to hang my hat on and my self-worth on like what I am as a SERE specialist, not as a human being. Like that shit didn't matter to me. Like here's me in my funny little hat, and this is me. That's all I cared about at the time. And I figured going to AFSOC, doing that was like a perfect stepping stone of like, I sit in an OSS now and I just teach pilots, but going to do that, I was like, here's escape velocity. I can go do cool guy things and go be a freaking GI Joe, whatever. But it turns out without that left and right limits, the commander at whatever squadron you are has the ultimate say on what you do. It doesn't matter what your AFI says. It doesn't matter any of this stuff. If he wants you to sit and check out vehicles and helmets and clean snorkels, and that's what you freaking do. And we fought a lot to get to a spot to be able to teach, to be able to use our skill set, to expand, their abilities as combat controllers and whatnot. But it was still just a constant grind, constant fight of like, here's my job, here's what I'm good at, just let me do it. And one dude will, you get a commander finally convinced, hey, SERE guys can do these things. He moves on, the next commander, dude starts over at ground zero again. Like, and so I had this ego, and I was, I thought I was going to save the world, and I kind of lost that purpose. I lost that drive because I was like, why the fuck am I trying so hard if no one else around here cares? Like, I was trained to do one thing. It's pretty broad, but this clientele, this customer, this squadron I'm at doesn't have that thing. So instead of like doing what we were taught to do, being crafty, using social skills, using our abilities to find work to make our situation better, I just kind of got sour, and the woe was me. I was like a victim, and COVID hit during that time. I had my first kid. My daughter was born during that time. My wife's career was going like freaking crazy. She was crushing it, and mine was going the opposite. So I had that like picture in my brain. It's like I'm supposed to be, the man in the house. I've never cared that if she's always made more money than me. So it's not like a big thing, but at least I wanted to feel like I was contributing to the family, and I wasn't, I was making the same money, but I didn't have that drive. I didn't have the motivation to show up to work and like be excited to do what I was doing. I was doing awesome, super fun things, but it wasn't fulfilling my like inner dialogue of like what I thought I should be doing. So once COVID hit, they put us on minimal manning, and my counterpart, like, we were supposed to do 50-50, have one dude come to the office to check emails and check the phone for a couple hours a day. He didn't want to be at this house, I guess. So he's like, dude, if I can't make it, I'll just let you know, but I'll go in every single day. So I didn't go into work for like 4 or 5 months. I just checked my email at my house every day. And we just put a pool in. We were down in Florida. It was the springtime, we couldn't go anywhere. Like I almost got arrested for being on the beach taking photos of the sunset, which was wild. Um, so I just, dude, I had the money, I had the time, I had the pool, and a gas station was literally like I could throw a rock and hit a gas station from my backyard. So I was drinking Coors Light like it was going out of style. And I was just
Mhm.
drinking, drinking, drinking. I was running a lot. I never stopped, working out, but I was never really like in my brain, I was like capable of this, but in reality, I was like achieving, I was doing the work of somebody down here. You know what I mean? So I could do hard things. My first ultra marathon I ever ran, my wife's out of town. So I had to get a babysitter to watch the kids. I had to drive up to Phoenix, and I trained for that ultra marathon because I wanted to like giving me an excuse to stop drinking. Dude, I stayed up till like 1 in the morning drinking my face off. The babysitter showed up at 3. I probably drove to Phoenix drunk, and I ran 30 miles, in the heat. It's like I've always been able to do super hard things in spite of my stupid behavior and mainly i.e. drinking. So to that point, like during college, I was drinking like a fish, but there's no consequences. During training at Fairchild, like that was the culture. Everybody around us was drinking. Like we'd go over to buddy's house and we'd get drunk, drive down to the bars, get Ubers to the bars, whatever Ubers weren't around back then. But this is what we did, you know. Everyone around me was drinking. Never in my adult life did I have a relationship or did I have an outside like just a fun activity where drinking wasn't involved. So it's like from 18 to 36, like that's all I knew. All my friends, that's all they did. I had very few friends who didn't drink, and most of the time they wouldn't hang out with us because they're a bunch of idiots drinking all the time, you know. So COVID really got dark for me because I lost that purpose and I got that victimhood mentality, and then like I didn't know how to cope with it because again I kept looking at me like I'm the only one who can solve my own problems, yet I'm a victim, so everything else is hurting me. It's somebody else's fault that I feel the way that I do. So I just numb it with booze. Um, and my wife was working full time, and she had an infant, which she was a good baby, so not very difficult. But there's still like a lot of that, you know, picture in my brain of what a family looks like. What does roles and responsibilities of a mom and a dad look like with a baby? Like I don't freaking know, but my wife was torn between she had a direct correlation with how hard she worked with how much money she was making. And she was making a buttload of money. She was working really freaking hard from the second she woke up, breastfeeding that kid. She was on her phone, answering emails, doing whatever she needed to do. She was making a great living and separating our, like really pushing our family trajectory in a good direction, a positive direction. But since I was that victim poo poo pants mentality, I was like, hey, like, why can't we just go spend time with our daughter on the floor, like, and play? But she was coping with me being kind of an asshole alcoholic husband through work. Like that was her coping strategy was I can control this. So that's where she went. And my son, so my daughter was born in May 30th. My son was born the very next year, June 3rd. When we first went to the doctor, their due dates were the same day, so we thought they were going to be Irish twins. So,
Mhm.
like, very first baby, trying to figure out how all this stuff works. Wife finds out she's pregnant again. I mean, that changes the whole freaking ball game, you know. Um, so life went really really quick for us in my personal life, but my work life again it was just stagnant, and I answered it with drinking, and it just got a little worse and a little worse and a little worse over time. Again, I was keeping up with my my work responsibilities. I ended up going back into work after COVID kind of slowed down. Like actually kind of got purpose. Like we had an avenue to go, and I got the go ahead from all the authorities to like, hey, do what you do to make us better. So that was awesome. So I started pushing that, but I already got that dependency on alcohol. So I was drinking way more than I should have, but able to maintain. So I didn't think it was a problem. And then finally, like it all does, like the freaking foundation starts to crumble and crack. It had been probably doing it for a long time, but my lack of inner control started to get externalized. Like I'd be super shitty and, spiteful that my wife was spending so much time working and not spending time with us as the babies and me, whatever. But instead of asking or having a conversation with her, I would just internalize it and I'd get spiteful and pissy because I was mad. I'd start drinking. And then, once you get drunk, you say things you probably shouldn't or you wouldn't normally. So just this slow kind of deterioration of like who I was as a person. I don't think I was necessarily changing. I was just veering off course between who I knew I was and then this other person was acting different, not in accordance with like my own internal, impression of myself, which caused distress. I mean, that's anxiety right there. You know what you're doing is wrong, but I didn't know how to freaking stop it. And the only thing I knew to do was to crack another beer, which was the reason I was in the freaking mess that I found myself in. So for years, and this is kind of like going back to your thing about the mission, is for me, like I want to break the stigma down of like one, like being brutally honest about how we respond to our emotions, our troubles, our anxieties, our depression, our anger, whatever. And then like being 100% fully accountable of your actions and knowing the second and third order effects of those actions. I was 100% aware that when I drank, it was probably going to lead to an argument. I was probably going to do something I would regret the next day. But because of that anxiety, that was like more fuel on my fire to drink more. So it was just like revolving door of like, I know I'm being a fucking asshole, but because I know that and I don't know how to deal with it, I couldn't talk to anybody. I wasn't going to talk to my wife because she's been telling me this the whole time, and that would make me look wrong. I would finally agree with what she's been saying for weeks or years, and I had so much pride and ego that there's no way I was going to be wrong. She just wasn't right, and I'll just suck it up, and I won't. I'll try not to be as big of an asshole tonight, but I mean, nothing changed. So as time goes through, we PCS to Arizona. Um, I've never once gotten in trouble for any alcohol related incident. Don't have a DUI on my record. Didn't lose my job. Didn't lose my family. Didn't lose friends. Didn't do anything. I was falling apart at the seams inside. My wife could see it, but she's such a strong woman. She's like, I can't fix it for you. She's tried in the past. Actually, stepping back. So we'd gone to couples therapy in Florida, right, kind of near the end of COVID, because again, me being me, just couldn't freaking handle myself. And this lady was super sweet. We'd gone like 6 or 7 weeks in a row, once a week. And then finally she's like, hey, you keep on bringing up this alcohol thing. And she's like, I'm not a clinical substance abuse counselor. She didn't have that accreditation or whatever. But we have another lady. If you guys want to talk to her next week, and we're just about to PCS. We're like 2 weeks from coming to Arizona. And so we scheduled one with her as a group with my wife and I, and then one with just me, like a couple days later. And so we kind of told her our story in an hour session. And so not a whole lot of backstory for her, not a whole lot of time, but she kind of stopped me halfway through and she's like, hey, I really think that you have an alcohol abuse disorder and like you need to get treatment. You're probably not going to stop this on your own. And dude, I'd like instantly, I got super guarded. And I was like, F you. Like, you don't know me at all. Like, you've just heard me talk for 30 minutes and you're going to tell me I'm an alcoholic. Like, absolutely not. My wife, dad had struggled with alcohol for a long time. He got sober all by himself. My dad's probably suffered with alcoholism for his entire life. And it's like, so again, all my adult life, it's been everyone around me is, I'm not doing anything different than anybody I know. But this lady's going to call me an alcoholic. And so that, dude, it really rubbed me the wrong way. And my wife got upset with her. She's like, no, like, we're just trying to figure out how to be young parents to young children. Like, we're not, he's not an alcoholic. So she made me promise her. She's like, most people, after you get told this news, they're not going to come back to the next session. But like, will you come back and talk to me about this? And so I reluctantly agreed. I went back and I told her, I was like, I really don't think that you got this one right. I think that, you know, the diagnosis it's loose. It was not wrong by any means, but like her big thing was like, have you ever blacked out while drinking? Well, yes. Like, when was the last time you did it? Like, I don't know. I mean, a long, long time ago. But that right there is one criteria out of, I think there's 4 blocks of criteria that you have to meet. And that's 1/4 of it. If you've ever blacked out ever. So I was like, man, this is a joke. You guys don't know what you're talking about. Well, come to find out, I got all of them. So, that was like a slap to the face, but dude, I was pushing it away the whole time. But internally, dude, I knew in Florida that my habits, I was reading my journal before we got on today, just to like recount all the crazy bullshit that I was telling myself in my journal, being extremely vulnerable. Like, hey, you need to stop drinking. You're going to ruin your family because you're drinking too much. And then I go to this counseling session and she tells me to my face that I'm an alcoholic. And I'm like, fuck you. You don't know what you're talking about. Like, where's that dissonance? Like, I know in this side of my brain that it's true, but somebody calls it out and my ego gets shattered and I turn into a, little spiteful child. Like, it's crazy, but it's the truth. It happened, And so I went to Florida, or from Florida to Arizona, and I thought I was gonna like step into a brand new world. I'm going back to the traditional SERE job, teaching air crew. There's 6 of us in the shop, so it's like I've got my community back around me, um, all the things. Well, my situation, my job wasn't the problem. It was the alcohol, which was the problem. And I was still being a victim. I was looking for that purpose to just magically appear, and it doesn't. And the whole time, like I'd talk to my wife, I'd write in my journal. I was like, I need to find a purpose. I don't have anything to wake up and like strive for. I'd work out for different things. Like in Florida, I'd paddleboard, and I'd like go for distance. Like, I'm going to go from this boat launch all the way around the point to this boat launch, like 22-mile long paddle. Like, boom, that's something to wake up every day and work out, go paddle, go be outside, do these things. But the whole time I had 2 brand new fucking babies in my house, and I was searching for a purpose. Like, if the shit was right there in front of me, like I have a wife who loves me, who's willing to put up with a bunch of bullshit. I've got 2 kids who depend on me, and forgotten about my childhood when, like that family structure was the one thing that I was doing everything I possibly could to try to reconnect and reunite. I have my own, and bro, I'm tearing it apart because I can't see past my own bullshit. That, like, if it's not a Coors Light can, it didn't really fucking matter, and that's so hard to say, but that was the reality that I was living. And it wasn't extreme, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not beating my kids. I'm not beating my wife. I'm not driving drunk. I'm not dealing with the things that, like we talked about before we got on this phone. Like, one of the big problems with this society is dads are not present in the family. If they are present in the family, like I was a fucking asshole. And I was so selfish and so self centered that I wasn't serving the family. Like, that's my purpose. It was right there in front of me the whole time. And I was so distracted and ignorant and so consumed with my addiction that I was trying to find something, trying to find something. So it was like just pulling at straws to find this purpose. And the whole time, the thing that truly mattered to me, I was just pissing on left and right. And looking back, it's so clear. But when you're in it, it's so freaking hard. Um, so when I got to Arizona, again, thinking that purpose was just going to reappear and ignite. And, you know, OSS life is pretty freaking easy. Teaching review lessons to pilots who don't really care every 3 years is not a whole lot of personal drive. You know what I mean? Like, feels most of the time like you're checking the box, which is really unfortunate and it's really sad. And again, that pity party still there, very present. Uh, it's like, why did we go through all this training to just be subjected to this nonsense, which is totally untrue. Like, there's so much we could be doing. We just choose not to because it's easy over time. And so I finally, I realized that, hey, I'm going to Arizona to find new purpose. Well, when that shit didn't happen and I'm still in the same position I was in Florida, just a new location, like, there was nothing else to turn to. So I was drinking more and more and more. And, you've got a young daughter, like, toddlers are not easy. Toddlers are not like strict with discipline like you're expected to be in the military. Like, hey, don't touch that. My son is going to freaking touch that just because I told him not to. It's not because he's disobedient. It's not because he's an asshole. It's because he was 3 years old. So I was taking, like, I needed this internal control and I couldn't find it. So externally, I was trying to control my environment to the extreme. So, kid threw a temper tantrum, I would get upset because I couldn't control their emotions. I couldn't stop them from being upset. So I was anticipating them getting hurt. I was, if I asked them to do something and they didn't do it, I was like taking it as a personal attack against my manhood. It's like all because I couldn't control myself. And again, these are the things, like, looking back the next morning and journaling, I never stopped doing that stuff. So I've got a pretty damn good record of all these crazy thoughts. Like, I can't believe what I did the day before. Because that morning when I was journaling, I said I wouldn't do this. I did it the night before that. And I said I'd take a deep breath before I responded. Nope. It's like I've got these what do they call those Venn diagrams? It's like a bubble with an arrow to another bubble. It was like my thought process, whatever they are. So, like, leaving work, I'm not going to drink tonight, arrow. Like, decision chart sort of things, like yes or no. Okay, no. How am I going to go home and not stop at the gas station? Decision chart, blah, blah, blah. And then the next morning, I'd go through and I'd fucking grade it. And I was like, nope, didn't do that one. Look here, I did this exact same thing I said I wouldn't do. There's just like nonstop revolving door. So finally, one night, my son was 3, and it was something so stupid. It was like brushing teeth. And I had built up so much anxiety around certain things that were just normal, everyday stressors for a toddler. Like, you don't want something shoved in your mouth by somebody else. That makes perfect sense for a 3-year-old to not want that to happen. But it's something, as a parent, like, you just have to do it. So instead of being cool, calm, and collected, I made it into a stressful event every single freaking day. And so they learned that when it's time to go to bed, brush your teeth, dad's going to get mad. So they start acting out as just a defense mechanism because they know it's coming. So it's making it worse every night, every night, every night. So finally one night, I'd lose it. I grabbed my son's toothbrush and I chuck it down the hall. And we've got these rounded molding, like, corners on our house. It's just a thin piece of metal. Fucking throw that thing. It dents the corner. So every day I walk down the hallway, I get this nice little reminder, a little toothpaste dent in the wall when I lost my temper tantrum and acted like a freaking toddler because my son was scared of me. And I remember I turned around. My daughter was hiding behind my wife, crying. My wife just had her arms crossed, just looked at me like she's freaking pissed. And my son is sitting there bawling because I lost my temper. And my wife's like, I can't do this. She never said the divorce word, but she's like, I can't live like this. This is not what I want for my family. So I remember, like probably a lot of people do, dudes do, we get pissed off, go get beer, go sit in the garage, isolate, and fucking drink your anger away. And the whole time, I just left my wife with this bullshit mess that I created. And I've done this so many times. Like, she's just so unfortunate looking back. Like, so fortunate that she never left me because she had all the reason in the world to do so. So I was just sitting in the garage getting pissed off, ruminating about these thoughts. Uh, why I can't just be a normal person and go through a nightly routine with my family without losing my temper. Why I can't sit in my own house without being drinking so I can deal with the anxiety of the inevitable me losing my fucking temper because I'm drinking. And the next day, I think we were sitting out on the porch, and I promised. So I tried to quit several times, and the longest stint I had was like a 3-month period, and like did good, but I wasn't really solving the problem. I was just not drinking. And so like my inner dialogue was still jacked up. I hated myself. Like, there's so much just anger towards myself that it was hard to give somebody else love when all you feel is just fucking pure rage. So even though I was sober for periods of time, I wasn't healthy. I wasn't happy. I wasn't making my family better. I wasn't making myself better, my wife better. But this time, I'd never gone out for help. I'd never asked anybody for assistance. So it was May 7th, May 6th when I threw the toothbrush. On May 7th, I was sitting out on the back deck and lied to my wife that I wasn't drinking, but I'd stopped on the way home to get my son from preschool, and I'd bought a bunch of White Claws because she couldn't smell those like she could smell Coors Light. And I was pounding White Claws on the last couple blocks to the house with my son in the back seat because I knew I was going to have to face the music that night because we didn't talk that morning. So White Claws in my truck. I'd make every excuse to go out to my truck to drink more White Claws. And she finally was like, called me on my bullshit. She knew what I was doing. She said, I'm not going to tell you to stop drinking. I'm not going to, you have to make that decision for you, but just realize that I'm unwilling to live this life. This is not what I want my children to see. This is not who I know you are, and this is not what I want for myself. It's like, you need to make a decision. And that was it. It wasn't an argument. There's no emotional response to it. It was just facts. Like, this is bullshit. Like, fix it. And I told her, for the first time, I was like truly vulnerable. I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't want to drink. I haven't wanted to drink for years at that point, but I couldn't stop it. The more I tried, the more fuel I was pouring on that fire, and I was just drinking more and more and more because I could not stop it. And I had this persona, like when we wear that beret and we have that little arch on our thing, but people treat us differently, I think, because they think and they're imagining we've gone through really hard things and we can control ourselves and we can handle ourselves in hard situations. So we go through life and we're getting constantly paid on this debt or on this purchase we did for me back in 2012. Like, I haven't really done hard shit like that since I went through training, but people are acting and treating me like this, like I somehow deserve this thing, right? So I didn't know how to control or fix my problems, but I was wearing this fucking badge of honor and this ego saying that I can handle my shit. So it was really, really hard for me to ask for help. I'd never known anybody who'd gone to ADAPT who didn't have a DUI, who didn't just do it to check the box. ADAPT is the Air Force's alcohol, drugs, and something prevention treatment, whatever. And she's like, that's what you need to call these people. So I looked it up. I Googled their little phone number that night. And I remember they didn't open until like 9 or something. And I remember the hardest phone call I'd made previously was to tell my wife that I had passed by one sit up. But this was definitely the hardest call that I've ever had to make. And I called them and I said, hey, I want to get seen. And I thought, like, internally, I was frazzled, dude. I was at my wit's end. Like, I needed help, like 10 out. Well, it's an appointment, like, hey, we can't see you until next Wednesday. But by the way, don't drink because you've already identified that you have a problem. If we test your urine and there's alcohol in your system, it's up to the commander whether or not you stay in the military. So I was like, fuck, this shit's real. I've got to wait a week before they can come see me, or I can come in to see them. So I didn't drink at all. Like, I just went completely stone cold sober at that point, and waited the week. Went in, had the little consultation meeting with them, and I want to, like, kind of march a fine line, because part of my mission is to open up this stigma and open up the conversation. So, like, if people want to get help, they're not worried about the stuff that, is on a lot of people's mind, especially in the military. And I walked in, and there's two girls, a staff sergeant and an airman who's in training, and they looked like they were 22, 23. And the first thing that popped in my head was like, there's no way these two, nothing against women, there's no way that these two women are going to be able to help me. They don't know what the fuck's going on. They're so young. They don't know. They have no life experience whatsoever. And here I am, a decade older. Like, I fucking know what I'm doing. And I was like, you know what? I told my wife, just like I did back in training, that I'm willing to do whatever it takes. It was one sit up. Now this is my thing. Like, I'm going to get better. This has to happen. This has to work. So I just laid it all out there for him. Broke down in tears, tell him about how I lost my temper with my family, my kid. And, very matter of factly, like, yeah, you meet the criteria for severe alcohol abuse disorder. And, like, we're going to have to meet with these people to figure out, what the next level of treatment is, blah, 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 blah. And so I'd already started looking around for, like, I didn't want to half-ass it, especially when I saw that, the people who work in the ADAP are, like, super young women. Again, nothing against women, but I was like, I want to make this work. I want the best care, the best treatment that I absolutely can. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to jump in the deep end, and I'm going to go full force. I'm not going to accept anything less. And so I'd looked online a bunch on treatment facilities in the area. I'd heard on a couple podcasts about people going to this place called Warrior's Heart. It's a treatment facility. There's one in Virginia and one in Texas, and it's for military and law enforcement personnel. So I really looked into that, and I was like, this is, like, these people understand what the military is like. They understand, like, kind of the lingo, the A-type personality. I'll, have a connection with them in that way. So I was like, this is what I want to do. So finally that meeting came around, and they met with the head psychologist or whatever, and they're like, hey, we think that a I can't remember what it is. Inpatient is like the thing that I eventually went to. There's one that was like, it was local. It was 3 times a week, and you went for like 3 or 4 hours at a time. Like, I think this is, this would be good for you. And I was like, well, actually, I found this thing called Warrior's Heart. I want to go there. Like, VAs will approve it. I already called the VA. They said they'd approve it, and they're like, oh, actually, yeah, we're trying to work you up to that. We didn't think you'd accept it. And I was like, no, I want to, like, full force. The hardest thing, the longest thing. This is what I want to do. So that took a long time to get that approved, because the military, like, they had their 3 approved, like, normal treatment centers that they send people to, and this wasn't on that list. So I was the first person from Davis-Monthan to go. So I, like, had to get signed off by so many freaking people. And so May 8th I called. I didn't go into treatment until May 30th, Memorial Day weekend, actually. Um, and that whole time, there was no counseling on, like, here's some coping strategies. Here's how to deal with the emotions that you're going to feel. It was like, if you have any withdrawal symptoms, you need to call 911 and go to the ER. If you drink, you could get kicked out of the military. And these are, albeit negative, things about the ADAPT system, because they're so inundated with people with alcohol issues, DUIs, whatever, and they're so littly manned. At least here, I can only speak to Davis-Monthan. It's like they're not your personal fucking sidekick. There is that personal responsibility that you have to take and own your shit. But that good little soldier that I am, the fear of, hey, if you drink again, you're going to get kicked out of the military. You could get kicked out of the military. That was enough spark to, like, I didn't have a craving to drink. Luckily I didn't have withdrawals, like, thank goodness. But that was enough to not have those issues. So I sat in limbo. I was talking to Warrior's Heart. I was talking to ADAPT. Warrior's Heart's like, dude, we've got beds for you. All you need to do is show up. Tell us when you're showing up, and we'll start. But I couldn't get the military to approve it. I finally called my commanders, like, hey, I don't know what's going on. Would you be okay with doing a permissive TDY, and we'll figure this all out on the back end? Like, I can't sit here and do this shit anymore. Like, I wasn't going into work, but I wasn't on leave. Everyone thought I was going away. No one that I worked with knew anything was going on. Like, all the dudes in the shop, no idea. I was freaking spiraling internally, but on the outside, I had everything looped together. You know what I mean? And so finally, they got it approved. I got a flight. I went down there, and it was, I mean, it's freaking inpatient treatment, dude. It's not fun. I couldn't have a conditioner for my hair. Not that I need it. I don't have fucking much hair, because conditioner has alcohol in it. I mean, there's a lot of people here who are, like, hardcore alcoholics. Like, their livers are failing. They're in and out of that ICU because they cannot stop drinking, and they're just killing themselves left and right. So there's definitely a spectrum of people who suffer from alcoholism, and, like, there's dudes with wet brain there, dude. It was hardcore. And but the great thing about this treatment center, the Warrior's Heart, was, like, they really, like, yes, it's an alcohol and drug treatment center, but there's so much of their focus was on trauma, and knowing, like, a lot of these dudes had a ton of deployments, a ton of military trauma, TBIs, all the stuff. And on top of that, they, were snorting coke and getting drunk every night, whatever. So there's a huge focus on both of those things. Like, here's how to get sober and here's how to live sober, but let's focus on the root cause of why you're drinking in the first place. Like, we don't know how to deal with emotions. We've never dealt with the traumas that we've all had, whether or not it's from your childhood or it's from combat or losing your friends or whatever. Um, and so suicide was ever present, dude. I was there, a guy who just graduated or, left treatment when I showed up. He had a 3-year-old or 5-year-old son, fucking killed himself. He's tier one operator. Couldn't do it. There's another 3 dudes ended up killing themselves that I'd met when I was there. They left. They had, all the plans in the world. They had everything lined up, and they're freaking, here's blah, blah, blah. We got jobs, blah, blah, blah. And through an email from their mom, fucking killed themselves because they can't, like, this shit is so freaking real. It's scary, and I'm extremely thankful that I didn't really hit the quote unquote rock bottom before I chose to get help. I was definitely not in a good spot. Like, again, I didn't have a DUI. I wasn't beating my wife. My wife didn't leave me. I didn't lose my job. I had this social network, that support structure that I could go home to after the fact, that a lot of these dudes don't have, right? And over the last year, I've been like trying to think, like, why do these guys get sober, get healthy, like smoking and joking, smiling, flying home, happy as can be, and then 2 weeks later, fucking shooting themselves in the head, or adamant they're never going to touch alcohol or drugs again. 3 weeks later, they relapsed, they're in the hospital, and they're coming back to treatment. They've literally just fucking left. What happens in those 3 weeks? What I really think it is, it's that buildup of time, like all those decisions and that cognitive dissonance that I'd experienced over the years of, I know what I'm doing is wrong, but I can't fucking change my behavior. If we could have those conversations, like, hey, dude, I'm really struggling with this. Can you help me with accountability? Like, I don't have what I need to make it through today. Can you just hang out with me? Can I go over to your house? As opposed to isolating, which is what we do when we start to feel shitty because we don't want to show our weakness. We ruminate on our thoughts, so we're making it worse. We get drunk, we're making it worse, ruminating more, and then we don't want to show that weakness. So the easy button is fucking put a gun to our head, dude. It's crazy to me, but I've, over the last year, so I got, May 8th of last year was when I stopped drinking. And then I've just been like really, really focusing on like slowing down, accepting life for what life is. Like, it's not supposed to be super happy. Like, you have hard days, you have arguments with your wife, you have arguments with your kids, but that's no excuse to fucking get drunk or avoid it. It's like, those are all learning opportunities. Emotions are just signals that something is going on and you need to respond to it. And so I wanted to do something like some sort of big gesture to celebrate a 1 year sobriety. And it just so happened that Sedona Canyon's 125-mile race started on the 7th. And I was like, I think I could finish it and end on the 8th. And my goal was to finish it at sunset. So you like turn around at the start line, you look at the sun setting. It's all, it'd be picture perfect, dude, for the movies. On a year after. And so that was like, it's crazy perspective how things change, especially with ultra running. At first I was like, I'm gonna go run up Mount Lemmon. So there's in Tucson, there's, you're gonna run up the Monster 300, but it goes up Mount Lemmon. So it's, I think right now I'm sitting at like right at 2,000 feet elevation. Mount Lemmon summit's at like 9,000. And so as a crow flies, it's only like 15 miles from my house. So it's literally just boom, straight up, badass mountain.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, on May 8th, I'm going to take leave and I'm going to run from my house. I'm going to run to the top of Mount Lemmon and have my wife pick me up and, drive me back down. That was going to be my big hoorah. So I think all in told, it had been like a 24-mile day for running, but again, a lot of elevation. And so I was like, that's what I'm going to train for, blah, blah, blah. And then I was like, well, maybe I run down and back because didn't seem hard enough. And then I saw that race and I was like, no, I'm going to do a 125-mile race. Like that's going to be my thing. And so part of that training, like I ended up getting hurt, so I couldn't do the run. But one of the training runs was to run up top of Mount Lemmon and back. And, like a 20-mile run seems like super far, but 20 miles of a 125-mile race is like, oh, not even a warm up. You know what I mean? Like, the perspective you gain from distance and time is crazy. And it's so parallel with getting better. Like I still have a hard time calling myself an alcoholic just because of the negative connotations that I've always had in the back of my brain for that. But I think that's so much just ego. Like at the end of the day, do I trust myself to go downstairs? There's what are those things called? Ranch waters. They're like margaritas in a can or something. There's 4 ranch waters sitting in my fridge right now because my sister-in-law's in town. It's like I don't trust myself to go down there and drink it, but I have a fucking ego problem and I can't call myself an alcoholic. Like, cut the shit, Paul. Like, call a spade a spade. It doesn't matter. It doesn't make me any less or any more. For over this last year, like I got in this mode of I wanted to make myself better and better. So I was constantly looking for something that was wrong. And it was really good for a good period of time because there was a lot of stuff I could work on. And then one day I was thinking about it. I was like, why am I constantly looking at my life like there's something wrong with it? Like, how can I just be healthy and happy with what I have and start enjoying this life that I've created, uh, and so for the last 3 months, probably, instead of trying to dig in my past and try to find and fix problems, it's just like, here's this freaking delicious plate of life that I'm living, and I'm going to enjoy it to the absolute fullest. And when something comes up, yeah, I still journal. I still do, the morning meditation and stuff to stay on top of my stuff. But like I'm here to enjoy it. And that just mental framing has finally switched where it's like, I'm not broken. Like I saw what life could have been and what was for the last 5 or 6 years. And dude, I've turned all that bullshit into like rocket fuel. And now I'm 10 times better. Like I'm not ashamed of anything that I did. I'm super fortunate for all the bullshit that happened in my childhood. Obviously, I wish if I could go back and change it, I probably would. But those are the things like that make me special in my mind today. Like there's no way I would have ran a 125-mile race. I guarantee it. There's no way I'd have become what we are today for a profession if any of that stuff in my childhood didn't happen. And I think my personal opinion, you look around the community that we work in, a lot of those people are probably trying to shove gauze into a wound from when they're a child by doing this job, by getting those fucking ego hits and being that alpha type personality, by stuffing their emotions because there's something that they haven't dealt with. Like, I think we all have it. There's going to that warrior's heart. Dude, all those people, there's 2 Silver Star recipients in there. There's a colonel from USASOC in there, active. There's all these glorified fucking war heroes. And the shit that was bothering them the most was like the abuse they went through in childhood, the divorce they had to go through, and the separation from their young child because they had to go deploy all the time because they're so tied to this mission that they lost their family. Now they're out of the military. That mission's fucking gone. Their kid has no relationship with them. The kid wants nothing to do with their dad because their dad wasn't there for the first 12 years of their life. All the other stuff that those people went through means absolutely nothing to them. What's killing them right now and putting the bottle and the gun up to their head is not having that relationship with their family. And so it's like we all have these fucking issues, but in our culture, military culture, the A-type personality is like to show weakness, dude. It's the last thing you ever would ever imagine doing, because you're just gonna get heckled on, you're gonna get shit talked, and you're gonna look like you're weak. But bro, like, dude, my supervisor in Florida, divorced, has no relationship with their children, told me I need to make a choice. It's going to be the military or my family, because I didn't want to go on this TDY that was 6 months long. I was, bro, this is easy fucking choice. And this was during the time when I was an asshole fucking parent. It's like, it's my family all day. 100%. There's no decision to be made, military or my family. Like, fuck you. Here's the thing that's going to last a lot longer than this military career. It's like my family. It's like the decisions that a lot of people make are tearing them apart. And it's no surprise to me that we have such a mental health crisis with veterans, because we alienate and we ostracize those who say like, hey dude, this, I'm struggling. Or they have a DUI and you get kicked out of the military, and every single fucking day after work everyone sits around, drinks beer. Like, come on, dude. We all fucking do it. You just got caught. That's so shitty. That's so fucking shitty. It's crazy. But I've rambled on for a long time. Dude, I'm happy. I'm super happy. I'm grateful for what I have, and I'm so freaking thankful that I can look back and I can learn from all those things, and I haven't lost it all. I will say this though, and I was reading that in my journal. And this kind of goes and speaks to the power of addiction, and like where I think a lot of people were. And there's two things. I remember I knew I couldn't drink anymore because I knew where that was leading to, but I was petrified of what being sober looked like and what living sober meant. Get all my friends drink. Every social interaction I've ever had as an adult revolved around drinking. I wouldn't go fishing, the things that I love to do, camping, football game, anything, all had to do with drinking. And it just socially drinking. You know what I mean? I was an alcoholic in my garage doing stupid shit, but I couldn't go out and do anything without having alcohol there. So my whole life had to change. And I think I was making mountains out of molehills because I didn't know what that looked like. It turns out it's a lot easier and than drinking, because I can, doesn't matter what time of day, I can go drive, like I can go do things with my family and not be that fucking weirdo with a flask. Um, but yeah, getting sober was terrifying. Super scared of it. And then one of the things that helped out so much was I felt alone, because again, everyone I knew drank, but I was the only one who's crumbling and falling apart. But again, remember, no one in my fucking office knew that I went to recovery, knew that I got sober. They just thought I left for 6 weeks on a TDY. Dude, I no one. One dude in my shop right now knows that I went to Warriors Heart and got clean. Nobody else does. My supervisor and my commander and one dude knows. That's it. I haven't told anybody. You're the first year guy, other than the dude in my shop, who knows. Because I had that like insecurities of, why can't I do what everyone else is doing? I finally had to let that shit go, and it was holding me back. And but I was holding it together, but yet looking around at everyone else and be like, why do they all seem okay on the outside and I'm fucking crumbling on the inside? I looked fine on the outside, just like right now. You wouldn't know the difference if I was drinking a year ago today than I am sitting here talking to you. But now inside, I'm happy. I don't hate myself. I love myself. I respect myself. And those are the things I could never have said a year ago. And it's such a huge shift, dude. It feels so free and light. just being able to wake up and like be happy with what I have. You know what I mean? Like I haven't been able to run since that race, which super sucks. But if that's the worst thing that I have today, like I can send it, dude. I'm not
Mm.
hungover, worried about what I said to my wife the night before, or God knows where I'd be if I continued drinking. I probably would have a DUI. I probably would be getting kicked out of the military. Like I'm fortunate. It's badass.
Mm. Love it, man. Thank you so much for being you and being real. This has been just a beautiful time where we get to push play on life and talk. And I got to listen to you as you shared your story. And I'm sure that the people that listen to this can relate to you in some way as a human. Because at my core, I do believe that collectively we all share the same heartbeat. We look and talk and sound a little different, but I think that humanity at its core is so similar. And I think that to be able to relate with another person who's vulnerable enough to share their reality is a beautiful thing, because it's an invitation to experiencing the gratitude that you have today through your suffering.
Oh,
And
yeah.
like I was saying in the beginning of this chat, is that the ultimate message is a message of hope. And if we look in the Bible and we read Romans chapter 5, verse 3, it states, rejoice in all suffering, because suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. And it's a beautiful reminder of the hope that we get to have. But hope is on the other side of suffering, and that's my interpretation. And I
Yep.
lean into that opportunity to rejoice through the suffering that every human will experience in some way. And what a privilege it is for me to listen to you.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
like the
Really.
like
Mm.
alchemizing those negative emotions and those negative experiences into positives. Like instead of being a victim and like seeing like, yeah, I couldn't control my childhood, but it made me the man I am today. Like, man, I said earlier I may have wanted to change that. I don't think I would because I'm proud of the person I am today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had to go through some shit, but like I wouldn't change who I am. That's for damn sure.
Yeah. A lot of that was really, really challenging to listen to. It was painful to hear, and also knowing that it's something that you've lived with for, what'd you say, you're turning 37?
Yep.
Yeah. So I just thank you for sharing all of that. I feel for you and I'm with you. I'm always going to be in your corner no matter what, no matter where we are in the world and where this awesome Air Force decides to put us. But I'll always be in your corner and support you no matter what. I think this will be a really good opportunity to just continue to lean into the vulnerability and raw reality that you're living, because through the mental health journey that I've been in with the Air Force, it led to beautiful things. I went to mental health a few times. I signed the form saying I'm thinking about killing myself, and they told me you can't see a therapist because TRICARE won't approve it. We have enough people on our team to help you, but your first appointment's going to be 30 days from today.
Yeah,
And I
dude.
had my appointment 30 days from then, and I was like, I'm not waiting for
Right.
the mental health clinic to save my life. So I told them at the end of that first meeting, I was like, what I'm doing right now is asking a question, which is, what's your phase one? And then I answer that question and I'm going to survive. was like, I just want you to all be on standby. Something is about to happen. You're about to see something happen on this installation, because if I'm the only person, if I'm one of however many other people are struggling with their mental health, this is not the only answer. Thank you for assisting, but this is not the only answer. And fast forward a few months, we put on the first ultra marathon on the Air Force Base at Lackland. So now that's going to be an annual event, and it's geared towards raising awareness on mental health and suicide awareness. And it's the start of something, but it was rooted in me having the vulnerability and courage. As scared as I was to go to mental health, I knew I needed help because my mind was rattled.
Yeah.
And I had no desire to live, but I care deeply for people. It's why I chose to go into the Air Force, because I knew I wanted to help people. There's nothing that I would say I'm good at today. But the only thing I do believe God has gifted me with genuinely and fully is compassion. And I've felt that since I was a kid. And that's why I'm doing the things that I'm doing, is to help people in any capacity that I can on a holistic scale, whether that be helping people identify their own physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual strength. We'll figure it out together. Yeah, I just thank you for everything that you shared. I know that people can relate to your story, and it's cool to hear the mission that you're on, which really at its core, it sounds to me like you're serving your family. Your family is number one. And you also get to, in our profession, remind people the resilience that they have in themselves. Should they find themselves having the worst day of their life, they'll have that skill set to come back home with their dignity. And that's a beautiful privilege that you and I both have, reflecting back on painful childhoods and looking at how the pain that we experience in our childhood was an invitation to help other people. And it's cool that you and I can relate on that.
Yeah.
When I
No, for
was
sure.
sharing, yeah, one of the reasons it was so hard to listen to your story, when you were talking about your dad, very recently, just 2 months ago, I got a notification on Messenger from this person I didn't recognize. It seemed like a sketchy message, essentially saying they knew my dad really well. They worked together in law enforcement for quite some time, and last she heard, he was living in Billings, Montana. And I was like, well, some of the information that she told me is accurate from what I heard. But the last I heard from my dad is when I asked if he wanted to meet my child, and my daughter just turned 5. But when I was in communication with him, because my parents got a divorce and he was in and out of our lives for the rest, he and I established healthy communication for the last few months that I was talking with him. And he opened up and told me how he would play suicide games because of all the shame that he felt. And up until that point, he was winning the game. It would just be up to chance. He'd flip a coin or do something and let chance decide if he was going to put a bullet in his head or not. And when I got that notification from this woman, I reached out to my brothers. I said, hey, I just want you to have some situational awareness on a message I got. Curious if you all got the same. And they didn't want to engage with this individual, but I thought about it and I didn't confirm any information, but I said I'd be open to having a conversation on the phone or FaceTime if they're interested. And that person responded and said, I would love to talk now. I was on the phone with that woman for 2 hours, and she answered. Well, I answered the phone call. We were FaceTiming, and she starts crying, and she's like, "I haven't seen your dad in so long, and you look just like your dad." And yeah, we talked about, well, it was more me listening, but I hadn't met someone who knew my dad in uh like I remember being scared of my dad all the time. I remember I was the one that got hit out of 4 boys. It was me. Come to find out, one of my therapists told me that if there is a child that's physically abused, it's usually only one, and it could have been because I reminded my dad most of himself. I don't know. It's kind of a mystery, but she just would tell me during that conversation just the beautiful side of my dad, and beautiful side that I never knew, because what I saw, there were some really beautiful moments that we had together. Like he was very intentional about embracing nature and being one with God, and I've always appreciated nature, and I've always felt connected to my dad through nature. And she told me she had this feeling she needed to call him one time because he lost it mentally very close to the end of his career in law enforcement, and ended up being medically removed from the field, and it was shy of 20 years. But he left and moved from Southern California to Billings, Montana. And her and my dad stayed connected for some time, but she said she had this overwhelming feeling that she needed to call him. And he answered the phone, and after multiple rings, he didn't answer. Took a few times. But he answered, and his voice was trembling, and he was crying, and he was attempting suicide. It's just so hard to talk about because I don't know if my dad is alive right now or not. I don't have a way of finding him, but she came into my life, and through the conversations we've had over the last few months, she has hope that he's still out there, and she's fighting for him. And that just brings me a lot of hope, is that I can one day, I hope that one day I could see him again. And I'm not I'm not I'm not mad at him. I'm not angry with him. I relate with him more than any other person on the planet because I know the weight of shame, and I know what it feels like to want to end your life because you think it'd be better for your child to live without you. Because that was where my mind was 2 years ago. And yeah, a guy that I worked with was selling his gun, and I had hope. I was like, oh, sweet. Everybody on the surface knows that I'm just this happy dude, but I wasn't telling anybody anything. I was like, I just want them to think what they're seeing, and I'll be okay if they believe this lie. But I knew I wasn't okay, and I lived with shame, and it was an anchor that I carried with me every day. But with the shame, I felt connected to my dad too, because I was like, I get it. It's like my dad would tell me about these suicide games he would play, and now I'm having these suicidal ideations, and I'm thinking and rationalizing why it would be okay for my daughter to live without me anymore. And I thought that it would be good for her. She was only 2. She wouldn't have to live with knowing this failure of a human and all these things that aren't true. I don't even know what I convinced myself of back then. I've suppressed it or moved on and healed through it. I'd like to think that I healed from it, but I don't remember anymore because it was a lie. but I relate with hopelessness. I relate with the person out there who has no hope. And I also know what it feels like to be on mission and to find hope at the other end of suffering. And I'm grateful for everything. I'm grateful for everything. I'll just say that. And I have all the hope in the world for people that we can just be people together. And I think I think we're all moving in the right direction. That's what I choose to believe, and I choose to have hope in humanity. And I just believe in serving one another with love and doing hard things together for a
Yeah.
purpose. I do have one question for you, because I feel like this person needs recognition. If you're up for it, can you share with all of us what your wife means to you?
Mm, that is good. And she is, like all the cliche things, like you kind of marry the person that kind of fulfills you and completes you. Like the stuff that she's good at is kind of opposite of what I am. She is so stubbornly driven, uh, so passionate about everything that she does. Uh, it's she isn't she. I wouldn't be where I am today without her. Like I joined the military to make her proud. Like I growing up, I didn't date anybody because I knew that relationships ended. I didn't want to put up with any of the bullshit of of going in and out of relationships. But there's something about her that kind of like how I started running. Like if there's any sort of pushback with hanging out with a girl, I was like, okay, we're done. Like not gonna put up with any of this BS. There's something about her that like I I kept leaning in on it. And we met in college, drinking, partying, and I remember like how to like what do they call that? Shotgunning a hookah. Like blow smoke in the other person's mouth. She wanted to show me that, and I thought she was trying to kiss me. So I went in to kiss her, and she like pushed me away. She's like, "Dude, go away! Like that's gross." I was like, "What the fuck? I thought this is what we're doing." um, but no, she's everything. Like my son looks exactly like me, spitting image mentality like me. My daughter looks exactly like her, spitting image, and they're the two of the most beautiful women ever, and they like for what she's put up with. I mean, she had her dad struggled with alcohol for a long time. Uh, he had a really abusive relationship with his father, who was an alcoholic. So like both of our parents were trying to figure out how to do things, and they did a really good job for both her and I. Um, but she knows what she won't put up with, and there's a very hard line drawn in the sand for her, and she sticks to her morals, and she knows what's right and what's wrong, and she's not afraid to speak her mind and to ruffle feathers. Where I'm kind of that, like, I'll judge you in silence, but I'm not gonna, the old me, I wasn't gonna speak my mind when I didn't see something I didn't like or I saw something I didn't like. She's very much vocal. She's a special woman, man. She is, and it's going back to that purpose thing. Like, how did I not see her as the purpose? Like holding her success in her business against her because I felt shitty. Like, how weak and little was I? Like I call myself a man, but I'm willing to, look down upon her because she's fucking trying hard for me. She's sacrificing her time away from her children for me, so we could have, I could retire from the military at 42 and not work after. She was, we're set up for that. And for the longest time, I was so spiteful because she wasn't spending time that I thought she should have with us as the family.
Mhm.
She's, whatever she touches, man, she makes better. And yeah, she's super dedicated. She's driven, sitting in her office. It's not very decorated. Usually it looks a lot nicer than this. She likes to move all the time. So the other day I came in here and everything was off the walls, and I was like, oh shit, we're moving. I had to call her out on that. But no, I wanted to say something. You'd mentioned about carrying shame, and oh shoot, I lost it, dude. Dang it. It was something. Oh, I can't remember who told me this, but they were like, you're not the worst thing that you ever did. And I had a lot of shame for the actions that I had taken, losing my temper, doing whatever. And I'd connected those things with who I was as a person. And those are just simply actions. Like I wrote in my journal, I was reading through, like I said, there's a passage in there. It's like, I know I'm not the person that I am, but there's a dark rider leading the cart or something like that. And it's like I never once changed as a person. I just wasn't acting in accordance with like what I truly was. So disconnecting those actions from who you are as a person, like I'm not a shitty dad. I'm a good dad. I've acted like a shitty dad in the past, but I don't carry around that weight and that burden of like, I need to now make my relationship with my son better because I lost my temper that night. No, like that shit happened in the past. I know I'm not going to touch that again. So I'm not carrying that weight and that burden and that shame. And I think if we can disconnect our past actions with our perceived reality of who we are as a person, that would alleviate so much burden off people because we all make fucking mistakes. It's nothing different than what we teach to our students. Like you're gonna screw up. Don't let it burden you. Don't bounce back from that shit. You
Mhm.
know. And I think so many people get stuck in that like repetitive cycle. Like, yeah, I fucked up. I did this. I did this. I did this. As long as you're not doing it right now, it's not you. Those are those are stupid things you did in the past. And as long as you can learn from it and make it like, alchemize that, make yourself better, then that shame, and it's like a freaking cancer, dude. It just grows because if
Mhm.
you don't like yourself, love yourself, and respect yourself, you can't do that for anybody else. The
Mhm.
amount that I can provide my family now, because I was so selfish with my time over this past year to work on myself, I truly believe that if you can't love, like, and respect yourself, you can't love, like, and respect anybody else because you don't know what that means. Like, I didn't like myself. I didn't respect myself. So I was drowning myself in alcohol every single day. And I'd give my parent or my kids a kiss on the head and hug my wife, whatever, and say that I love them. But it's nothing compared to what true love is. Like I wasn't respecting my wife when I was isolating in the garage because I couldn't handle myself. I respect my wife now by being present with her, by giving her my time, by helping out around the house. I respect my children by being a good dad, by being present. So I think those things, like disassociating yourself with the past, letting that like cutting that stuff hard off, and then love, like, and respect yourself, dude. That's it. And I think the other thing that I had a misconception on, and it, your story about your dad, dude. That's tough. I mean, I've got closure. Like I have a relationship with my dad. It could always be better, but there's no way that doesn't shape your actions every single day, your entire life, going forward. And the other day, my dad, he's dealt with alcohol for a long time, and he knew that I got sober But just like me, dude, it's a revolving door. Same fucking story. He doesn't know how to open up emotionally. He doesn't know how to connect that way. One day he called and he said, "Hey, I'm getting sober." And I was like, "That's out of the blue. He just called me. Like, I'm done with this. I don't want to do it anymore." Like, that's awesome. This great news. So I was trying to give him words of encouragement, kind of like what we've been doing. And his words got slurred. And I was like, "Can you repeat that, Dad? I didn't catch that thing." And then I was like, "Oh shit, he's drinking." So he started sober, but he's tying one more on, you know? By the time that phone call ended, dude, he fell over, passed out, dropped the phone. And I was like talking to him, slurring his speech real bad. Boom, big crash, big bang. And I was like yelling on the phone, like, "Dad, Dad, Dad." Hung up, call him, "Dad, Dad, Dad." No answer. Call his wife. She was at some event. I couldn't get a hold of her. So I was like, fuck. Called the cops. It's like somebody's gonna have to walk in. And I told the dispatcher, I was like, I'm so sorry for whoever has to walk in and find his dead body on that floor. But I was convinced. I was back in that same mental spot that I was at when I was 13 years old, walking into that door, not knowing what the hell is going to be in front of me. But I was going to put somebody else through that. And your dad, being a law enforcement, dude, like when we go deploy, not a SERE guy, but military deploys, like 6 9 months a year. Cops do it every fucking day, dude. Every day. I was in treatment with a dude when he was a young police officer over in Washington State. He had an autopsy of a 5-year-old or a 5-month-old baby who had choked. They thought they had choked, but he had a quarter-size hole in its heart. They just didn't have it diagnosed right. So he got a phone call saying baby's choking. Go save this baby's life. But he was eating spaghetti. So he showed up. He's like, nothing's adding up. This kid can't choke on spaghetti noodles. Lo and behold, that's what happened. But they had to go check out the autopsy, right? So he went there and freaking cut the baby's head open, splayed the baby, like did all the things. And that, from his like one of his first calls ever on duty, has traumatized him. And he's 20 some odd years into his law enforcement career. Like, do they do some crazy shit? And
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we honor them enough. And it'd be nice to live in a world where there's not horrible shit. You don't have to
Mm-hmm.
deal with this stuff. Um, and those wounds never heal. That's one thing I've found out. Like this last story I was telling you about my dad. Because that opened up, dude. I was in the same spot, same feelings, like it happened yesterday. And I realized for the longest time I had never dealt with those things because I'd always felt bad for the other person. Like I felt bad for my mom. I felt bad for my dad for going through divorce, but I never felt bad for myself. Like I never dealt for myself. It was always about somebody else until I finally, and I think this, the other message I got is like, recovery is extremely, getting healthy, mentally healthy is extremely selfish. You have to spend so much time focusing on you. And I struggled with that. I went away for 6 weeks to get sober and I came back. I was like, dude, I got so much more work to do. Like, I need dedicated time for myself, even though I've been gone from my family for so long. And it all comes back tenfold. Let me be honest, but um, like we just don't give ourselves that time and that space and that like acknowledgement that shit freaking hurts and it's not gonna heal, but here's how we deal with it. Not to say that I'm perfect, dude. Last week I got fucking pissed off. That's life. It happens.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's important for people to understand that chasing perfection is
Yeah.
not healthy because we're never going to be perfect. And some people are really big on like ego death and murder your ego. And
Right.
for me, I I just want to invite people into humility. And that's why I love training the way that I do, because it brings me to the end of myself, which is the invitation to find out like what is God teaching me about my character today. And I love getting to the end of my capabilities and being humbled and being like, all right, God, what do you have for me? Let's do this. And I'll tell people like the trail is the classroom, God's the teacher, and I'm showing up with a notebook, a write in the rain. I'm ready to take some notes. So yeah. Well, this has been really awesome, man. I appreciate your time again. And I do have one more question for you. No preparation for this one. There's no wrong answer, but as we transition into the rest of this beautiful day that God has given us, I am curious about what phase one means to you.
Mm. I mean, I think it's ongoing. For my story particularly, they always, once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. You're always in recovery. You're never recovered. I don't. So I think it's a lifestyle. You're never fixed. You're always working, and it's that acknowledgement. And I don't think that acknowledgement or that gaining of awareness ever ends, because you're the second you think that you've got it figured out, something's going to like totally blindside you, or there's maybe a lot of areas in which we don't have awareness on. And through constant work, you're going to find those things and be better prepared, not fully prepared. So I think for me, phase one is just an ongoing, ever present awareness building, like honoring life, living life on life's terms. And for me, I don't think there's a phase two. What is phase two? You get better at what? Like, good luck.
I love it. That's great. It's encouraging for me. I love hearing other people's perspective on what phase one means to them. And
What do you
if
got?
someone asks me, what's that?
What is your phase one?
Thank you for asking. I was just about to say, like,
Oh,
it's
shit.
still something that I can say words. I can say phase one is training. It's the invitation to train for adversity, find hope, define resilience. Those are all themes of it, but it's an internal moral compass ultimately so that I can grow holistically. I prioritize my physical health. I prioritize my spiritual health. I prioritize my mental and emotional health so that I can be the healthiest person that I can be. And with that comes extreme ownership and awareness of who I am right now and making the conscious decisions to be who I know I can be,
Mm.
to define the character that God allows me to. I can't do the things that I've done purely on my own physical strength. I've only been capable of doing what I've done because I've not asked, what am I capable of? I've asked, what is God capable of? And when I ask that question, it's going to be really cool to see the result from that.
Mm.
It always is. Defining impossible 20 plus times, running ultra marathons, I never thought I could do it.
Yeah.
But every step was worth it because I knew I was chasing myself, running with God, and I found hope. So the mission continues, the message continues. As long as there are ears to listen, I will continue to say there's hope. So that's the ultimate message through me asking, what is my phase one today?
I like it.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Well, this has been really good, dude. We'll stay connected. And yeah, again, I'll be in your corner and we're friends for life. But if there's people that are listening right now and they want to stay connected with you and chat with you, how can they find you?
Yeah. I'm on Instagram. Just Paul, I think Paul Herrold, I think. And then I just started another little deal, SERE Psych. I think it's SERE.psych or SERE_psych. It's basically just like the things that I've been reading on. I mean, I'm basically regurgitating other people's content, but it's like something that I thought about that morning during my run or whatever that I was working on that day, or something that's been mulling in my brain. I just post something on it. Um, yeah, that's me. I think if I have any words in closing, I think it's just like words of encouragement to anybody out there that is struggling. I think the biggest thing that helped me out was like when I finally asked for help and let it out into the world, that proverbial weight off your shoulders, dude, it literally went away. Like when I was on that phone call with ADAPT and I was like, okay, I'm invested in this now. I can't turn back. 10 times easier. The hardest part is just asking for that help and having that vulnerability. And with all the people that I've shared my experience with, like no one's ever shamed me, belittled me, all those things that I was worried about. And if they do, you're not fucking worth it anyways. So I think, yeah, I appreciate your platform and your mission, because I first found you through that marathon and a post on like Air Force Facebook page or something about your race down in San Antonio, and I was like, found this podcast, listened to a ton of the episodes. Um, yeah, not enough people talk about it, and not enough people are vulnerable like you are, and especially give people the opportunity to like share the message. So I'm forever grateful, and I appreciate it.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. If anyone's listening to this and this added value to your life, and you think that this could be an opportunity for you to share your story, mission, and message, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram, Phase One, or you can jump on the website, phase1missions.com. We're taking this, we're running with it, and we're trying to spread the message of hope. But yeah, man, I appreciate you sharing those words with me. It means a lot. It gives me fuel to the fire, and I'm just going to take that and keep going.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah, dude. Well, I hope you have an awesome day. Everybody else, get out there, enjoy the beautiful blessings of the day. And until next time, peace, love, keep it real.